Hey, it's Tim Miller from the Bulwark. We officially have polling now post-RNC convention that tells us kind of what kind of bump or lack of bump, in this case, Republicans got from their big gathering. And the worst news of all is for Trump's disastrous vice presidential pick, JD Vance. So let me just back up and kind of explain to you just how bad JD Vance's polling is. My friend Harry Enton over at CNN analyzed vice presidential polling going back to 1980, and he discovered that JD Vance has the worst favorability rating of any vice presidential nominee going back that far, including Palin, including you can list whoever your least favorite VP was. The worst. The only one, actually, to be underwater. I want to explain what that means, but let's just watch Harry's analysis.
It's in negative net territory. Look at that. -6 points. I will tell you, Aaron, I have gone all the way back since 1980. He is the first guy after immediately following a convention, a VP pick, who actually had a net negative favorable rating. That is underwater. The average since 2000 is plus 19 points. JD Vance making history in the completely wrong way.
I mean, it's amazing. Plus 19. And I know people talk VPs don't usually matter, but they're usually
they're pretty popular.
Usually
they're popular. In this case, he's dragging Trump down.
There's also Ohio, which I, have been around long enough to have been there on an election night. And the reason I was there because the person who wins Ohio wins the White House.
Right.
Ohio's a red state now.
Yeah.
So what does the JD Vance pick do for Trump? Obviously, he is senator from Ohio.
There's this whole idea, JD Vance is, going to help out in Ohio, perhaps help out in those Rust Belt, those Great Lake battleground states. But if you look at Ohio, JD Vance won in 2022, but he only won by 6 points. That's worse than Donald Trump did in 2020. It's far worse than Mike DeWine did in 2022. He was the worst performing Republican candidate in 2022 up and down the ballot in the state of Ohio. He had nothing there.
All right. So Trump does very well with white working class voters. That's one of his superpowers. So what does Vance add?
Yeah. What does Vance add? Look, he won white working class voters. He won white voters without a college degree in the state of Ohio. But pretty much every Republican wins white working class voters. And if you look here again, the margin that Vance put up was the weakest performance of any major Republican. It's worse than Trump did in Ohio. It's worse than Mike DeWine did in Ohio. The JD Vance pick makes no sense from a statistical polling perspective, Aaron.
As Harry showed you there, JD Vance is a -6 in favorability. That means that there's 6 percentage points more people on average that have an unfavorable opinion of him than a favorable opinion. So if 51% of the country had a favorable opinion of you and 49% of the country had an unfavorable opinion of you, you'd be a +2, right? On average, the VP candidate right after the convention has a +19, right? Like usually this is where candidates are coming off a high. Everybody in your party likes you. A handful of people in the other party like you because, you just had this big propaganda fest for a week and you've gotten all these gauzy profiles and nice attention. So, usually that comes down as you get further into the campaign and you take negative hits. But usually right away when the candidate is introduced, they have a very positive image. JD doesn't even have that. Like he is not even starting from a good place. He's starting from the worst place ever. He's the least popular VP candidate ever since modern polling. And it's not really that hard to figure out why. Part of it is the policy positions he took. I mean, after Trump picked him, all the attention was not on any sort of great initiative he undertook. It was on his extreme positions on abortion. Things like women, should, have to carry the rapist's child to term.
Look, my view on this has been very clear, and I think the question betrays a certain presumption that's wrong. It's not whether women should be forced to bring a child to term. It's whether a child should be allowed to live, even though the circumstances of that child's birth are somehow inconvenient.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would like abortion to be illegal nationally.
And women who are in violent relationships should stay in those relationships.
And this is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace, which is this idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term. And maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical.
Like, so on the issues, he has these extreme far right weirdo nutter, dude bro policies. So that's hurting him. And then you have can we just say it? His personality. This person has no riz. He has negative charisma.
All right, this is the guy. That's right. I love you guys.
He's one of the most unappealing people that I've ever encountered in politics. We were kind of just, talking about it the night after his speech on the live stream here, and kind of discussing like who in Washington would you least like to have a drink with. And for me, it's like Ted Cruz is last, and then JD Vance would be second to last. And so that's not great to like have. If you're like, if I had to have a beer with somebody, if I had to sit there with them for 30 minutes and talk, like this guy would be at the bottom of the list. That's just not a great trait for a politician, And so there's the extreme policy issues. There's the lack of personality. And then now we've got the weirdness now that he's out on the trail. It's like a guy that has no charisma, no personality when he's being natural, but he has to be unnatural to try to perform and do the MAGA performance shtick that Trump has down so well. Here's the thing. When he's out on that stage, he has it all backwards, right? Like Trump's shtick is that he's totally full of shit, but he kind of makes you think that he's telling you the truth because he, says things that you're not supposed to say. He says un-PC things, just something about his performance skills that even though he's a total liar, he convinces a certain type of person that he's like telling them secret truths. Like JD Vance has that like inverted where he actually is like pretty extreme and weird, but like his presentation, it makes you wonder if that person is giving it to you straight. And you just look at when he talks, you just have to wonder, like, this person is selling me something. This person's a phony. He gives off phony vibes. So it's an inverse of Trump, right? Who is a liar, who's kind of giving off uncomfortable truth vibes. Whereas with JD Vance, like he's a genuine extremist who's giving off liar vibes. That's a bad combo. Okay, that's a bad 1-2 punch. And the result is least popular VP candidate in history. We'll see what happens out there. You got to believe Trump's having some buyer's remorse on this. He's got to be looking at Don Jr. and thinking, what in the fuck? How did you saddle me with this guy? The least popular ever? Like, he could have picked anybody. He just was looking for somebody that would go along with all of his crazy. He could have at least picked somebody who could give a speech. But seems like the early returns are in, and the VP pick, a massive fail for Donald Trump. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with more coverage from the campaign trail. We'll see y'all then. Subscribe to the feed. Peace.